Another year, another season of Formula 2 has been completed. So with that circus now over, that means that now is a perfect time to do my... If you've watched my tier list videos before, then you'd be used to seeing me categorise the drivers into tiers going from A star down to F, but due to popular demand, I have changed this to the typical tier list ranking system of S down to D. This has actually made it a little harder to rank drivers as there will only be 5 tiers instead of 7. So leave all your disagreements and problems with this list in the comments and have a fight, I don't know, something like that. So other than that small change, it's the same video concept that I'm sure you're all familiar with anyway. I will only be ranking the full-time-ish drivers, so sorry to Nicholas Solov, Martini Stenshorn, Lawrence Van Hoopen, James Wharton and Tassanapol Inthropuvasak, as they will unfortunately all be missing out on this list as they only featured in the championship over the last few rounds. So without further ado, first up will be the Invicta drivers, starting with the champion Leonardo Fornaroli. The champion, as always, will be the easiest one to rank, really. The Italian had a pretty comfortable year, we have to admit. He never really looked troubled at all in F2 this year. His championship winning chances didn't really seem that strong until around halfway through the season at Silverstone, where Fornaroli finally claimed a race victory for the first time in 4 years. Actually insane that his last race win before that came in Italian F4 in 2021. I feel that hurdle Fornaroli finally jumped over really kick-started his season, as he then took the championship lead in the following round at Spa with another sprint race win, as well as disastrous performances from the other championship rivals. Up until then, Leonardo had been very consistent in all the races, but took it up a level after that race win that had escaped him for so long came to him. Fornaroli ended the year with 4 wins, 9 podiums and 3 pole positions, making him the driver with the most pole positions as well as joint most wins and podiums. I mentioned earlier that his consistency was very good, which it was, as he actually qualified inside the top 10 in every single round and only finished outside of the points in 4 races. I've also not mentioned how he did all this in his rookie year against far more experienced drivers as his rivals. I suppose the only criticism of him you could have is how he was level in qualifying against his teammate at 7 races each, and that he was helped with having that Invicta rocket ship. But Fornaroli still did win the championship, so I'm gonna have to put him in S. Next up is his teammate Roman Stanek. Just was such a disappointing year from the Czech driver. Going into his 3rd season of F2 with the best team, you'd expect a really good season surely, finishing high up in the standings, right? Stanek in the end could only manage a 10th place finish in the championship, whilst his rookie teammate went and won the title. Such a letdown. He had more race results outside of the points than actual point scoring finishes, which sounds even worse when you compare him to his teammate who only had 4 races outside of the points. On his day, Roman clearly had pace as he achieved a win, 5 podiums and 2 pole positions throughout the year. His one win wasn't even from one of those 2 pole positions either. In fact, his win actually came from finishing 3rd. If I had a nickel for every time Roman Stanek won an F2 race by finishing behind drivers who were later disqualified or penalised, then I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Stanek's racecraft clearly was his downfall in 2025, as claiming that many pole positions and equaling your champion teammate in qualifying cannot mean you are slow. But on the bright side, 2025 was Stanek's best year in F2, as he'd finished 22nd and 18th in his previous 2 seasons with a combined points total of 29. He scored over 3 times as many as that in 2025 alone, albeit with a much better team. But anyway, it was still a poor season from Roman, so he will be going in C. Now on to the next team, Campos, starting with Pepe Marti. The driver who departed the championship early, missing out on the final 2 rounds of the season due to his Formula E commitments, Marti's F2 season was actually pretty decent. He scored 3 wins and 5 podiums this year, although they were all in reverse grid sprint races, apart from the P3 finish in the Monza feature race. But that is still impressive nevertheless. Marti loved to come to life in a sprint race. His F2 rookie campaign in 2024 was very underwhelming, as Pepe finished 14th overall last year, but this year was a big improvement, as he was pretty regularly scoring points and finished 8th overall in the standings. But before he left F2 after Baku, Marti was actually sitting 6th in the championship and actually ahead of his teammate Arvid Lindblad. So Marti technically did have the better of his F1 driver teammate this year, looking at the standings, which we cannot ignore. However, the qualifying head-to-head tells an entire different story. Marti was out-qualified overall by Lindblad by 9-3, which isn't a great look for the Spaniard. I'm torn on where to place Marti on this list, as on one hand he did beat his very highly rated F1 bound teammate, but on the other, you have to remember that Hadjar in his second F2 season were challenging for the title in that Campos car the year before. So Marti being pretty far off that doesn't look that great. So anyway, I'll place him in B. Now onto his teammate Arvid Lindblad. The F1 bound driver had, let's be honest, an underwhelming season, which sounds crazy considering he finished 6th in the championship as a rookie with 3 wins. But when you take other things into consideration, such as being the 4th best rookie, accumulating 9 penalty points throughout the year, which is 3 away from a race ban, finishing behind Marty at the time he left the championship, being out-qualified by his debutant teammate Nikola Solov in the final 2 rounds of the season, and being in perhaps one of the best cars which almost took Isaac Hadjar to the title last year, it really isn't as strong a season as Arvid should have had. But despite all those negatives I have just berated Lindblad for, he still had many positives throughout the season. He achieved 3 wins, 5 podiums, a pole position, and also very comfortably beat Marty 9-3 in qualifying overall, which demonstrates his strong pace on his day. I am on the fence where to place Lindblad on this tier list, so I will unconfidently put him in B. Now onto the MP drivers, starting with Oliver Goethe, another Red Bull Junior and another one whose season didn't go to plan. Goethe had a pretty awful time this year as he finished down in 15th in the championship. He scored just 37 points all year with no podiums either. However, there are positives I suppose to this. Goethe scored 14 of his 37 points in the final round at Abu Dhabi, where he scored 2 P5 finishes. He also qualified on pole in the penultimate round at Qatar before he was later penalised for impeding. But this does show Goethe does have pace on his day. Either that or he could have been blessed by Mechachrome. Surprisingly, Goethe did not get obliterated by his teammate Richard Verschoor in qualifying either, despite the Dutchman finishing miles ahead of him in the standings. The qualifying head-to-head was just 8-6 to Verschoor, impressive when you consider the difference in experience. But despite those positives, it was still a disappointing year from Goethe, who I will place in D. So now onto his teammate Richard Verschoor. At last, Richard Verschoor has completed his final year of F2. Well, that's what we think so for now. Verschoor had a really good 5th year of F2 as he recorded his best ever season with a 3rd place finish in the standings. 170 points is also his highest points total by over 60 points from his previous best. Richard achieved 4 wins, again his most in a season, and 6 podiums in 2025, which equals his most in a season. So whilst this is all impressive from Verschoor, it was also somewhat disappointing to see him not get closer to the title. He led the championship for a fair amount of time earlier on in the season, but this form could not be replicated in the second half of the season, with only 1 podium scored after Austria, which allowed him to slip down the order and let Fornaroli claim the championship. Usually I'd say a 3rd in the championship puts you in the conversation to be an S tier, but Verschoor will not be in that conversation, I'm afraid. This is the kind of season you'd expect from someone with Verschoor's experience. I mean, most of the F2 grid were racing in F4 when Verschoor made his F2 debut, but with everything I've just explained, I think that validifies Verschoor's place in A. Just quickly, can everyone subscribe right now? I'm close to 3,000 subscribers. Still insane to me to say that out loud. And once I hit that milestone, I will launch the Formula Maximus Discord server. That's right, the official Formula Maximus Discord server. So everyone, go subscribe. Now onto Hitech, starting with Luke Browning. The Williams Driver Academy member had a fantastic season, 4th in the championship with 1 win, 1 pole and 9 podiums is quality from Luke. His consistency all throughout the season is what kept Browning high up in the championship standings. It took him a while to claim his first victory, which finally came in the Monza feature race after he also claimed his first pole position that weekend too. He convincingly beat his teammate in qualifying as well with a 9-5 record in the Brits' favour. Browning though really should have finished in the top 3 of the championship, but a horrendous final 2 rounds at Qatar and Abu Dhabi, where he scored just 1 single point across them both, saw him slip down to 4th. In my opinion, and I think some others too, something definitely seemed to be playing up on his car during those rounds. But anyway, this may be very controversial, but Browning is going in S. Now onto his teammate, Dino Beganovic. Although he was comfortably beaten by his teammate, I thought the Swede still had a pretty good season. 7th overall in the standings with 1 win, 4 podiums and 1 pole position. His form in the first half of the season was quite frankly pretty awful. Despite 2 podiums and a pole position, slightly fraudulent pole at Imola, as he set that lap time before the vast majority of the field had come back out to do their final set of qualifying runs, and then the red flag came out, gifting Dino his first F2 pole position. But anyway, after Spain, Beganovic had only scored points in 3 races, and actually if you exclude that Imola race, Beganovic would have gone pointless from Jeddah to Barcelona over those 4 rounds. Very unimpressive. But fair enough to Beganovic. He locked in after that and propelled himself to 7th in the championship. He had big rounds in Baku, where he won the sprint race and finished 3rd in the feature, and in Abu Dhabi, where he finished 4th in both races. He also scored the same number of wins and pole positions as his teammate, just a lot fewer podiums in total. So all this has made me decide that Beganovic will go in B. Now onto the next team, which will be Prema, starting with Sebastian Montoya. Now I've got to give Montoya credit, as I did not expect much at all from him this season. And yes, whilst he did finish down in 12th in a poor Prema car in his rookie year, this is still impressive from the Colombian, I have to say. By the way, Montoya definitely had the best livery on the grid. Sebastian managed to score 3 podiums throughout the year, but slipped outside of the top 10 in the standings at the final round of the season in Abu Dhabi, thanks to a double pointless scoring round. I don't think many at all predicted Montoya to finish above his highly rated teammate Gabriele Mini, but he did manage to pull that one off. However, Mini actually was the one with a better qualifying record, doing so 8-6, but overall it was a decent season from Montoya, who is going in B. Now onto his teammate Gabriele Mini, a very underwhelming year from the Alpine Academy member who finished 1 place behind his teammate in the standings in 13th. Super frustrating for a driver of Mini's talent. He did score 3 podiums throughout the year, but his inconsistency is what really held him back in 2025. Mini would have good spells of scoring points, but then follow that up with bad spells of no points. Gabriele beating Montoya in qualifying does show he's no slouch and has pace, so I expect better things from him next year. But anyway, I'm placing Mini in B as well. Next team will be Dams, starting with Jack Crawford. The American had a great 3rd season of F2. He improved again, finishing as runner-up in the championship after he finished 5th last year and 13th the year before. He achieved 2 poles, 4 wins, 3 of those being feature race wins, and 8 podiums, which all sounds incredibly strong. So how did he not win the title with that sort of record? Well, Crawford had too many abysmal weekends. It took him until the 5th race of the season in Saudi Arabia to score points. He'd have super strong weekends, such as winning the feature races at Silverstone and Baku, and double 3rd place finishes in Hungary, but he'd go and follow this up in all of the following race weekends with double 0-point rounds, which is just not how you put together a title challenge. You cannot be this inconsistent. Okay, I may have lied a little, as Jack did score 1 point in Qatar after the Baku win, but you get my point. So there were very high highs and very low lows for the Aston Martin development driver, so for me, he goes in A. Now onto his teammate Kush Maini. Oh dear. What another catastrophic season really for the Alpine Academy member. Maini too, in his 3rd season of F2, finished 16th in the championship, his worst so far. Actually, he has regressed every year, so 2026 could be even rougher judging by this. He scored just 32 points all year, with those points coming in just 6 races. Kush did have a fantastic round at Monaco with a sprint race victory and 6th place finish in the feature, so he took home with him 18 points, which is a great haul of points. In fact, that Monaco weekend scored him 56% of his total points in 2025. Before Maini finished 7th in the final race of the season, he had not scored a single point since Silverstone. Really terrible, I'm afraid, to go 12 races without scoring a point. And to rub salt into the wound, Crawford absolutely demolished him in qualifying 12-2. Maini has to go in D. Now up is ART Grand Prix, starting with Victor Martins. ART are not in my good books after this year, which I made very clear after I reacted to my F2 predictions. But anyway, it was a pretty bad season for Martins, who also regressed in his 3rd season of F2, just like Kush Maini, who I just mentioned. In 2023, Martins finished 5th. In 2024, he finished 7th, and in 2025, he finished 11th. How did it go so wrong for the highly talented Frenchman? Victor had strong pace on his day, which was demonstrated with his 2 pole positions this year, as well as 1 win and 3 podiums, but too many retirements and pointless races just made it such an underwhelming 2025. I think it's also important to point out that he did have a lot of bad luck, especially with a certain Irish driver. He's going in C. Now on to Ritomo Miyata. From one disappointment to another. Ritomo Miyata, I will never stop believing in you, but my god is it hard to after 2025. Miyata did improve from his terrible rookie year last season, with a 17th place finish for the Japanese driver. He did show signs of improvement as he scored his first podium in Spa. In fact, Miyata's Spa weekend was very strong for him, as he accumulated 19 points that weekend, which turned out to be 63% of his total points scored this year. Scoring points was rare for Ritomo, as it only happened in 7 races this season, and as well as that, he got obliterated in qualifying by Martins 12-2. I'm afraid Miyata is going in D. Next team will be Rodin, starting with Amaury Cordeel. Oh, Cordeel. 2025 looked like the year we would finally be rid of the Belgian in F2. That was until Christian Mansell dropped out before the season opener and Cordeel subsequently stepped into his car instead. 17th, 20th, 17th and 19th. What do those numbers mean, you wonder? Those are the positions in the standings that Cordeel has finished in for his 4 seasons of F2. 19th being the position he finished in this year. He scored points on just 2 occasions giving him a grand total of 3 to his name this year, making 2025 his lowest scoring points season. He departed the championship after Baku and got beaten in the standings by Nicholas Solov, who took part in just the final 2 rounds. My cordial slander is almost finished. He got obliterated by Dunn in qualifying 11-1. Easy D. So now onto his teammate Alex Dunn. A season full of ups and downs for the Irishman. Dunn finished 5th overall in the end, making him the 3rd best rookie, which is definitely impressive. However, he did have a few disastrous moments. Causing that pile up at turn 1 in Monaco was horrendous, as well as accumulating 12 penalty points throughout the year, which would usually reward a driver with a race ban, but Alex timed his well to get his final points in the last race of the season, where he of course hit Martins for the 100th time this year. Therefore, he escapes a race ban. His pace was super strong as he scored 2 wins, both feature races, 8 podiums and 2 pole positions throughout the year. His qualifying form was also super strong, albeit against a very weak driver most of the time, as he only got out-qualified once in 2025, which includes Stenshorn as well. Dunn was leading the championship for parts of this year, but he couldn't consistently remain at the top as he dropped down to 5th, but that won't stop me from placing him in A. Now on to AIX, starting with Joshua Dirksen. Such a strange season from the Paraguayan. In his 2nd year of F2, Dirksen improved by 1 place as he finished 9th in the standings with 8 podiums and 2 wins. Interestingly, they were the first and last races of the season. Strong numbers, but we cannot ignore the stats behind them. Dirksen had an insane end to the season as he scored 6 podiums in the final 8 races of the season, but his year up until Monza had been pretty underwhelming. Dirksen had scored just 23 points in total before Monza and had gone on a 4-round pointless streak from Jeddah to Spain. That form is truly horrific. The only thing that was consistent with Dirksen's season was how he beat Shields in every single qualifying session this year, but I think that says more about Kian Shields. Dirksen is going in B. Now on to the man himself, Kian Shields. The recent F1 free practice debutant had another Hall of Shame year as he finished 24th in the standings on 0 points, a country mile behind his teammate. His best race finish was 11th and managed to finish behind 2 part-time drivers in the standings. I just mentioned how he got out-qualified by Dirksen in every single qualifying session, so I'm going to save you all some time now and place him into D. Now onto the penultimate team, Trident, starting with Sami Megatunov. The Trident pairing left the championship after Monza, so it will be slightly different to rank them, but unfortunately for them, still pretty easy as it was a terrible year for them. Megatunov finished 21st in the standings with just 2 points to his name, although those 2 points were actually all of Trident's points they accumulated in 2025, so maybe we should put some respect on his name. Megatunov had the better of his teammate in most races and most qualifying sessions as he beat Esteson overall 8-3. I think we can tell that the Trident car was clearly the worst this season and so much slower than all the others, but anyway, Sami is going in D. Now it's Max Esterson. The American had a disastrous year, 0 points and 23rd in the championship. He had a best finish of 10th. Sadly, this was in a sprint race, so 0 points for that feat. But that 10th place finish does elevate Esterson above Shields in the standings, so well done to him. He got comfortably beaten in qualifying by Megatunov 8-3. It was such a rough year for Esterson, so he will be going in D. Now it's the final team, Van Amersfoort, starting with John Bennett. We're on a strong run of disastrous seasons. Bennett too had a year to forget as he finished 22nd in the standings with just 1 point. So this too means he finished behind 2 part-time drivers. John did improve as the year went on, which was proven with his qualifying form. He was out-qualified in each of the first 4 rounds by his teammates, but eventually brought it back to only just narrowly lose to Villagomez 8-6. But even still, not many highlights in 2025 for Bennett, who will have to go in D. Now onto the final driver, Rafael Villagomez. The Mexican driver actually had a pretty impressive year for his standards. Villagomez finished 14th in the standings, which is a huge improvement from his 24th the year before. He scored 43 points and even scored 2 podiums somehow. Whatever Villagomez did during this off-season, I think we all need to take note. But that's enough of Villagomez glazing, as 14th still isn't that amazing, although a massive improvement, so Rafael is going in C. There we have it, my 2025 F2 ranking tier list. Thank you all so much for watching this, and apologies for how late it's coming out. So do comment with where you wrongly disagree with my rankings. Do also leave a comment and subscribe and follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you all later.